Welcome to the KSLA Cafe. I'm Dominique Ben alongside Adria Goins, and we've been wearing purple off and on for the month of October. October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We're talking about surviving domestic violence.
Yeah, this is one of the most scary topics, especially for women out there. What's funny is that, like, in recent years, it's really become something that's been a little bit more okay to talk about. You know, a long time ago, it really wasn't. It was something that you swept under the rug. You didn't talk about your problems at home. But now women are coming out more with their issues. They're being able to speak about it more, and we see more and more people standing together as women, especially for domestic violence.
Yeah, Project Celebration does a really great job here in the Shreveport-Bossier area. We know that they just had a domestic violence awareness breakfast, and you know, you have survivors come out and talk. Like you said, many years ago, you knew that domestic violence was there, but nobody talked about it. And now I think that women and men, because we know that men can be victims too, they are taking control. They're taking back their lives, and they're not going to have this anymore. That's the message that they're sending. And you know, domestic violence, it is no respect for race, gender, socioeconomic. It happens across the board to different people, of everybody, you know.
And it could be happening to, you know, best friends. Your, you know, someone that goes to your church, someone that you know very closely, and you have no idea that it's happening behind closed doors. You know, maybe a lot of people, like we said, are speaking out. Some people are still afraid. They don't know who to go to. They don't know who to talk to, so they do keep it to themselves. But you know, that's when you have to look for warning signs with your friends and not be afraid to ask them and speak up and say, hey, you know, you can talk to me. A lot of times women, when they are too afraid to come out, which we have seen an increase in women and men, again, as you mentioned, becoming more vocal about these issues, but sometimes they're afraid because they don't know where to turn.
Right. We're going to be talking about the warning signs, you know, if there are any, when you should get involved. Yes, you should get involved because you could save someone's life. We're going to be talking about protective orders. That's a really big thing. I remember doing a special assignment on protective orders many years ago when I first got here, and we're going to talk about that piece of paper that you know, a lot of women and men try to get signed, and whether, you know, they feel that those protective orders are doing what they're supposed to do. And then we're going to leave you with some agencies that you can go to, definitely, if you are a victim of domestic violence, or you feel that someone that you know is a victim of domestic violence. Joining us right now, I want to bring in two very special, brave women that have come to talk to us. Chris and Barney, thank you so much, Chris, for coming. And Deidre Williams, thank you, Miss Deidre, for coming.
Thanks for being here.
Wow, I don't know where to begin, because, you know, just reading the story of you both being survivors, my heart goes out to you.
Yeah, what an
Thank you.
We were speaking to them, you know, just catching up before we started the KSLA Cafe, and it's hard. I can only imagine how hard it is for you guys to speak up about what you've been through, but to hear it and to just instantly, you know, feel for you guys and think about what you've been through. It's just got to be very difficult. Chris, why don't we start with you? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your case and your situation and what you've been through, as much as you'd like to speak about.
Absolutely. Well, back in 1993, I married a Bossier City firefighter who ultimately, in a few years later, murdered our 3-year-old daughter, Miranda. I had fought him for so long, trying to protect Miranda. I did protective orders. I called the police. The abuse actually escalated after I told him to leave and that we were done. Really, it was then that he started the whole power and control situation. He felt his grip loosening, and I was gaining more confidence, and I wasn't going to put up with any more of the abuse. But after I told him that he needed to leave our family home, the abuse just escalated, and it continued even after he met someone else, who he ultimately also murdered the night Miranda was murdered.
Did you ever see any signs before you got married to him that he may have been abusive?
Let me answer that. Yes, the thing is when I married Charles, I was 23 years old. Mm-hmm. That was 20-something years ago. And as a young woman, I really didn't know what signs to look for. I was in love. He was so beautiful and charming. It was after the first time I had an inkling that something wasn't right was right after our honeymoon. We married, we went to Puerto Vallarta for our honeymoon, and then he did a 180. It was the oddest thing, and it scared me. What I noticed was the lack of respect mm-hmm. that he had for our marriage, and he liked to go out and frequent the bars and everything. It was as if he knew he had me. He knew that I was probably in a position to help him get on the fire department, and as soon as we got back, I noticed that the lack of respect and the verbal abuse began, and that's really when it hit me. But before I married him, I was in love.
Yeah,
I was young, and most young girls and young women really don't know what to look for. They are just smitten, and they want to be happy. They want to make them happy.
Do you think sometimes, I guess, with a lot of people that are starting out in relationships, and I hear this a lot, is sometimes when the person, the significant other that they're with, if they're constantly calling, they think that's cute.
Yes.
That they're constantly calling. Oh, he's calling again. Oh, he's texting again. Oh, he wants to know where I am. But that can be the beginning stages
Absolutely.
Of domestic.
Absolutely. That when they start calling and texting and I miss you or sending flowers, that was one of Charles's things as well, was love bombing. Mm-hmm. Let's get married right away. Let me move in. It's the gifts. It is these promises, and they sweep you in. And when they want to have a relationship right off the bat, within a few weeks or even say "I love you" after a couple
mm-hmm.
of weeks,
mm-hmm.
That can be a sure sign, mm-hmm. along with the constant phone calls and the texting and where are you? I'm just so worried about you. That's another thing. Mm-hmm. I'm worried about you. Where are you?
Control.
Absolutely.
At what point did you realize I've got to get out of this? Because a lot of women who are faced with this situation are too afraid to get out of it.
Right. Miranda was about 18 months old, and I just got so tired of fighting with him, like leaving us. In addition to his fire department job, he did other jobs on the side, and I just had enough of the constant going out and, not conforming to what a family should be, mm-hmm. in the verbal abuse and just the disrespect. He did not care how I felt or how he was hurting me, or how he was hurting Miranda. And so I made a decision. Actually, we had gone out of town together to a fire department softball event in Oklahoma. And the trip was so awful for me that on the way home, because we drove, I made the decision right then and there on the way home, I can't do this anymore. Mm-hmm. He does not love me. He does not love me, and I need to get away. And I wanted to raise Miranda in a loving environment. I did not want to raise her in a witnessing a marriage that was dysfunctional and not healthy.
Yeah.
So you divorced him.
Yes.
And then he ended up in a relationship with someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Did he marry that person?
No.
Okay. And so take me back to that day when it could have been you.
Absolutely.
She was leaving her job, was it? And mm-hmm. he had Miranda mm-hmm. at the time?
At the time that Miranda was killed, I was in New Orleans. I had just received my deputy assessor certification because I worked for the Caddo Parish Tax Assessor's Office. And because Charles was granted joint custody even after an arrest and conviction for stalking, he got to keep his job. It was like handing over my child. Yeah. Had I kept her from him, I would have been arrested. So the judge ordered me to give my child to Charles while I went out of town to receive this amazing award that I had worked so hard for. Mm-hmm. And
you would have rather taken her with you.
Absolutely, mm-hmm. yeah. So I didn't want to leave her. And it turned out to be the biggest mistake of my life. But being a young woman, back then I was terrified to buck the system or stand up against people in authority. I was taught, you don't question. And like I said, had I gone against the judge's wishes, Charles would have thrown a fit and had me arrested. Had I said, you're not taking her, you're not having her, I'm taking her with me. So, and it was, yeah, it turned out to be the worst day of my life.
And so you got a phone call letting you know there was an incident or a situation?
Yes, I was in my hotel room and I had called Charles was living with his parents at the time because his girlfriend Michelle had kicked him out. And I called to talk to her that night. It was a Tuesday night. And I called to talk to her to tell her good night. And his father, Charles's father, said that they weren't there, which I found strange because he had to pick her up from nursery school and bring her home. And they were supposed to be getting ready for bed and supper and bath and all that. And so I said, well, okay, I'll call back in about an hour to talk to her. And when I did, Charles's father handed over the phone to a Shreveport police officer. And the Shreveport police officer would not give me any details. Everyone, I think, was confused at that time because they thought Michelle was Miranda's mother. And here I was calling saying, I'm her mother. What's going on? What's happening? And so a few hours passed before I got the official word from the Bossier City Fire Department chaplain that Miranda was dead.
Oh my goodness. That has got to be, it's so difficult to even process that, and it's being so far away. I'm sure you felt.
I didn't even know. My body just reacted. My brain, your body and your brain kind of reacts, and you just go into overdrive, and you try to figure out what to do. I had recently remarried my husband Jeff, and we had only been married for 3 weeks, and all I knew was that I needed to get home, and that's a 6-hour drive.
Yeah.
Just me and him in the car, trying to figure out what has happened, and where did the system go wrong? Why did no one listen to me when I was constantly calling the police and saying, please, we need your help, protect her? Because Charles was constantly threatening to kill us both, kill me and kill Miranda. And he even solicited a coworker through the Bossier City Fire Department to see if he knew someone that would kill me and my family.
And did you go for help at that point? Did you bring that to the attention?
I brought it to the attention of anyone who would listen. And even the coworker took it to his captain, and it was never reported.
Why? I don't understand.
I would like to have that question answered as well.
He was, you said he got a stalking.
Arrested and
stalking.
Convicted for stalking.
Did he have a restraining order? Did you have a restraining order
I had a
against him?
restraining order. I had multiple police reports for him violating restraining orders, and I have all, just like Deirdre here, I have all of that evidence in my possession. Yes, I called the fire chief several times. I would call the captain, probably to the point to where they probably thought I was crazy, because I was like, I need help. Miranda needs help. Can somebody please help me control him? His parents, I would call his parents. He would call me in the middle of the night saying, I'm going to kill her. On his visitations, I'm going to kill her, and then I'm going to kill myself. And his family, his parents, even paid people to stalk me and take my pictures. I mean, I was living in constant fear for so long. And he would tell me, you will never know when it's going to happen.
Oh my goodness.
I can walk up to you, or somebody will walk up to you and kill you dead.
What's the reaction after the incident happened with Miranda and with his girlfriend at the time? I mean, at that point, it's too late for the people that could have signaled for help. It's too late for sorry. Did they acknowledge at that point that they dropped the ball?
Nobody, everything was hush-hush. Everything was very quiet. I will say this. At Miranda's funeral, the back half of the church that we held her funeral at was a sea of blue. I had lots of love and support from his coworkers, because his coworkers, his fellow firefighters were devastated. They got the call, actually. He knew that they would get that call, and as soon as that call came over their radio that a child had been murdered, they knew it. So, but initially, no. I never had someone in authority come up to me and say, I am so sorry. We were wrong. We failed you. We failed Miranda.
And he was ultimately killed by police?
By police, yes.
Okay.
Simply because he refused to put his weapon down, but that was his plan. Charles had a detailed plan of what he was going to do and how he was going to do it. And his plan was to actually have police murder him too. And but the police officers, they didn't have a choice. The first responders could not get to Miranda or Michelle because the scene wasn't safe. And he knew if he would raise his weapon that they would kill him, and they did.
Before we bring in our other guests, when I was researching this, I came across another Sally.
Yes.
From 2014. So for our viewers, if it sounds familiar, his brother had the same history, and his brother is Michael Sally.
Michael Sally, yes.
2014.
Yes.
He killed his wife.
Yes.
And then killed himself.
Yes.
And there could have been a potential of a child being involved in that
Right,
scenario
Absolutely.
as well.
Absolutely. The thing that
I'm getting chills.
gives me chills about that story is Michael had been arrested and put in jail for holding Gwen and their little girl at gunpoint at home. And he was ultimately arrested and put in jail and then released.
We were discussing this in the newsroom, and I know this is, we don't have the answers for this, but do you think maybe this is a genetic situation? Or is this something that is just maybe they've seen in the past? Or how could two brothers have such almost identical situations?
Well, people ask me that all the time.
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
And here's how I think about it. First of all, domestic abuse is a learned behavior. It is a learned behavior. People ask me, well, how are the family? How are the parents? I really don't know, because Charles, we never spent a whole lot of time with his parents. We also know that there is always a possibility, but I can say this. Michael made the statement to Gwen, and this was told to me by her sister, I'm going to do to you exactly what Charles did to Michelle and Miranda. I'm going to do the same thing. And he held that promise. He certainly attempted it. What are the odds that two brothers in the same family would commit such a horrible crime? The thing that also really bothers me is when people try to pin it on mental illness. Again, people choose to be abusers and batterers. Mental illness, to me, did not play a role in either of these situations. They were well enough to hold down jobs, manipulate the public, manipulate their victims.
Yeah.
You'll never convince me that mental illness had played a part in this. I don't know.
Maybe it's a situation. I mean, obviously, a situation with control. Maybe clearly no respect for women.
Nope.
So that, or children for that matter.
Right. Exactly.
You're innocent. You just don't think, especially somebody that's the father,
right.
would do that too.
Here's the thing about that. Charles and Michael should have been their daughters' protectors. They were the men that their daughters would judge all other men by. And Charles killed her. He killed her. How could he look into her beautiful blue eyes and pull the trigger?
Yeah.
Twice.
Gosh.
It floors me.
Yeah.
To this day.
My goodness.
You're a stronger woman than I am, because it would be very difficult for me to even, which I know you want to raise awareness.
I do want to raise awareness, and I've had 20 years to process this and to really heal. But my healing began right after Miranda died, and I just knew that had to be hope for a brighter future. That this is my mission. This is my calling. It hurts. It's horrible to tell the story, and it hurts to relive it. But I have to be Miranda and Michelle's voice. Michelle has no one speaking for her, and it is my duty to, and it is my promise to Miranda to tell this story to the whole wide world, so that people in authority, people who have the power to help victims and children, will stand up and do it, not fail like they failed Miranda, this sweet, precious little girl.
Yes, and I want to come back to you, Chris, and talk about protective orders, because I believe that has something to do with you and Deidre as well. And I also want to talk about Gwen's Law, your ex-sister-in-law. You know, we know that Gwen's Law is there on the books in the state, so I want to talk about that and if it needs more teeth. But right now I want to bring in Deidre Williams. And Deidre, you have a very similar story to that of Chris. I just look at the braces on your arm, and you were saying that that's because of your abuser.
Yes.
Share with us your story and what happened with you.
So I'm from Illinois, and I moved to Georgia to help my mom, who was disabled. And I started working on the military base in a barbershop. My abuser, I didn't know at the time, he was stalking me. He would come by the shop and he would watch me. He later told me this, like, after we got married. So he's good at setting up scenes. So he set up a scene where our path would have to cross. So our path crossed, we met. He just started off all these lies in the beginning, but I didn't know, so I believed him. And we started dating. Eventually, he asked me to marry him, and I closed down my shop. I sold out my shop to the girls that was working in my hair salon. And we moved here to Shreveport in December 2011. The abuse started so fast that I didn't even know what to do. So we were living in a hotel in Bossier City. He strangled me a few times in there. I wanted to run. I didn't want to marry him. I didn't have nothing to go back home to. And I come from a very poor family, you know, to where they couldn't help me. But he was such an amazing guy. Like, he was like...
He was charming?
He was everything. He was absolutely everything. Charming, supportive. He spoke about God a lot, you know, and he spoke about he come from this very good family, and so I went with it. So 9 days after we got married March 3rd, I woke up pretty much, he strangled me till I actually urinated on myself. And when I woke up, he was taking my pulse. And I woke up coughing and gagging, and also to him pouring water on my face.
He probably thought you were dead, and he was trying to...
He actually thought I was dead, and he was taking my pulse. He poured water on me, and I woke up coughing and gagging. So I still have problems to this day, because sometimes with the PTSD, I can still feel his hands around my throat. It got to a point where I was just so scared that he was going to kill me, and thinking that he needed help, I kept trying to get him help. But he would cry so much, so I just felt compelled to help him get help because, yeah, and I was thinking, well, he was abused, he's broken. I don't know if he went off to war zone. He needs help, and maybe this would fix our marriage if I got him help. You know, the abuse would stop. And it was just so embarrassing, and I couldn't tell my family because I come from a family that's very loving, and they just, there's no way that I could tell them this.
So we know women and men stay because of fear, humiliation. It's you know, you hear these stories and then you think, okay, the protective order, that piece of paper should help. And the story that I did, most of the women say that the piece of paper that the protective order is on is not even worth it.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel this way?
Is it because the process is so long, maybe? Or, I mean, because oftentimes the abuse can continue whenever you're just still trying to go through the court process. And that, you know.
You know, when I taught, and I did interview a judge, Judge Waddell, and, you know, a lot of times the judge's hands are tied. I'm not saying this is your case, but, you know, they get women that come before them several times. They they sign the order and then maybe the woman goes back.
Yeah.
You know, so they are also trying to grapple with, okay, I signed this order before, you went back, now you're here again. So they have to go through that. I can't imagine, I wouldn't want that job. But then, you know, you have Alicia West. She is from this area. She had protective orders and she was murdered. Yeah. So I don't know where in the system, you know, where it needs to fill in the gap. Maybe, you know, you ladies know, and I know that you are going to Baton Rouge a lot, talking about Gwen's Law, but I mean, perhaps there is, I don't know.
Yeah, I know, it's so difficult because obviously every case is different.
Yeah, and you want to think that every case is serious.
Yeah.
Every case is serious.
And too often some people may cry wolf, but that's the problem, is the majority of the time when it's serious, a situation that's life-saving, you just don't, you don't know. But what bothers me is when you ladies talk about you had so much evidence. That how in the right mind could someone think this is...
Absolutely.
When I'm sorry, I don't mean to... I noticed your face when she was talking about some of the things that she... And you were like, yes,
we have a lot in common when it comes to dealing with the justice system. Yes. We have a lot, and we just met Sunday.
Yeah.
But we have a lot in common about how the justice system in Louisiana works, or doesn't work. So yeah, let me just say this. It takes a victim, on average, 7 times to leave their abuser. And I really think, I know that judges' hands are tied. I know that law enforcement their hands are tied. And it's frustrating when a victim keeps going back. But here's the thing, you have to, in order to really understand how a victim's brain works, an abuser it's a very slow process. And an abuser grooms their victim in a very slow process, just like a pedophile grooms a child.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then eventually and then she loves him, and then she wants to fix him. Yes, she will go back. She will keep going back until she finally gains the strength. But here's the other thing. When she does leave, as in my case, because I didn't go back, she's in even more danger. And I think too, judges and attorneys, especially in our law enforcement, need education on why a victim stays and why they keep going back. There needs to be a little bit more compassion. I know that there are laws out there. Some laws need to be changed.
Like she said, you know, you didn't have any family here, and then your time was running out. So what do?
Right.
I feel like you have to go back, even though you don't want to go back.
Exactly. You never want to go back.
We're about to wrap this up, but I wanted to ask one last question. You still live in fear of him?
I still live in fear because they allowed my abuser to get away.
But you're here with us, so you
I
don't
am
fear.
here with you guys because now it's time for me to take courage and speak out because there are other lives at stake. I stayed with him for the length of time because he was threatening to kill me, my children, and other people. And coming from the history of what I had and both my maternal grandmothers being killed in front of her children, I'm working in law enforcement, I'm working in the prison. I see the men that look normal that did these to other women. And I know what's going on behind closed walls. Like she know the monster in these men. You know, I stayed for the preservation of my life and the life of other people.
We are
Gwen's Law.
so glad that both of you guys are here with us today.
Yes.
I'm so happy to be
Thank
here.
you for having us.
Just
Absolutely.
because I mentioned that we would talk about Gwen's Law, 2 minutes. Talk about Gwen's Law really quick. This is your sister-in-law who was murdered by your ex-brother-in-law.
Yes. Well, actually, the expert would be Gwen's sister. She is the one who really pushed for this law to be on the books to protect, you know, victims. And usually, the law is out there to hold perpetrators in jail long enough to have a hearing, I do believe. But
instead of going and then getting out.
Instead of going and getting out, like with Michael and with Charles, because they let Charles out that very next day. They called him at the fire department as a courtesy, so as not to embarrass him in front of his coworkers, to just come on down to the station. So I have seen how Louisiana is improving, and we are talking about domestic violence more, and I am so happy. And I am very thankful for Gwen's Law, because Gwen sacrificed her life. and we want to honor her as well.
Thank you so much, ladies, for being brave and sharing
Absolutely.
your story.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Very incredible to hear. We do have some numbers we want to pass along to you. We'll put them up there on the screen for the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233. That is available 24/7, 365 days a year. So if you ever want to speak to someone, if you know someone that may be abused, you know, reach out to them, reach out to this phone number and ask them what you can do. You know, watch out for your fellow friends and sisters.
And we know locally, Project Celebration as well as Providence House are just a couple of agencies here that provide help to domestic violence victims.
Absolutely.